It was an ordinary Tuesday morning in September 2019 when Air Force nurse Sarah Chen realized something was terribly wrong at Edwards Air Force Base. She had worked in the medical sector for 3 years, knew every hallway, every protocol, every familiar face. But that morning, while checking the list of hospitalized patients, she found something that made her stop dead in her tracks. There were 7 names in the recovery ward that she had never seen before. 7 men admitted during the night with severe combat injuries, but with no arrival records in the official systems. Sarah stared at the computer screen again, making sure she wasn't imagining things. The names were there: Johnson, Rodriguez, Murphy, Williams, Thompson, Davis, and Mitchell, each listed as Special Classification, Restricted Access. In 3 years of service, she had never seen this designation. What disturbed her most was the absolute silence surrounding these patients. Normally, when wounded soldiers arrived at the base, there was movement, conversations between doctors, worried families calling. But these 7 men seemed like ghosts. Sarah decided to conduct a routine check in the recovery ward. As she approached the first room, she noticed 2 guards strategically positioned in the hallway. They weren't wearing standard Air Force uniforms. Instead, they wore dark civilian clothes and had that rigid posture typical of specialized security agents. When Sarah showed her badge and explained she needed to check the patient's vital signs, one of the guards spoke into his radio using codes she had never heard. After several tense minutes of waiting, he nodded, allowing her entry. The first patient was unconscious, connected to various advanced medical equipment that Sarah didn't completely recognize. But it was when checking the second patient that she noticed something that would change her life forever. In the uniform folded over the chair beside the bed, there was a patch that made her freeze. It was a military emblem she had never seen, a black raven on a grey background, with numbers that didn't correspond to any known Air Force unit. Sarah memorized every detail of the symbol and discreetly photographed it with her cell phone. As she left the room, she feigned normalcy, but her mind was buzzing with questions. Who were these men? Why were they being treated in absolute secrecy? And why did they wear patches from a unit that apparently didn't exist in official records? During the rest of her shift, Sarah couldn't concentrate on her routine tasks. The image of that black raven kept haunting her thoughts, and she instinctively knew she had stumbled upon something much bigger than she could imagine. That night, Sarah went home and immediately researched military unit patches online. She searched through databases of Air Force units, Special Forces emblems, and classified military symbols. Nothing matched the black raven patch she had seen. The more she searched, the more convinced she became that she had discovered something that wasn't supposed to exist. Sarah printed out the photo and studied every detail under a magnifying glass. The craftsmanship was professional, military grade, but the design was unlike anything in official military heraldry. The numbers below the raven were particularly puzzling. They didn't follow standard military unit numbering systems. Sarah spent the next 3 days discreetly observing the movement around the special recovery ward. The patterns were always the same. Civilian guards at the doors, doctors she didn't know entering and leaving the rooms, and an institutional silence that seemed to protect these mysterious patients. She tried to access the electronic medical files but discovered she needed security clearance far above her level. Each login attempt was recorded, so she stopped quickly to avoid raising suspicions. During a casual conversation in the cafeteria, Sarah mentioned the new patients to a more experienced colleague, head nurse Margaret Santos. Margaret's reaction was immediate and alarming. She pulled Sarah aside and whispered that some things at the base were better left unquestioned. Margaret explained there were classified projects that even she, with 20 years of service, wasn't authorized to know about. The head nurse ended the conversation with a clear warning. Excessive curiosity could be detrimental to Sarah's military career. But Sarah wasn't ready to accept vague answers when human lives were at stake. But Sarah Chen wasn't the type of person who accepted vague answers when human lives were at stake. she had become a nurse to care for people, and these 7 men clearly needed proper medical attention. The next night, during her night shift, Sarah decided to conduct a deeper investigation. She waited until 2 in the morning, when movement at the base was minimal, and walked to the special recovery ward. The night guards were different from the day ones, seemed more relaxed. Sarah approached confidently, carrying a clipboard and acting as if she was making routine medical rounds. One of the guards questioned her, but she explained she was checking vital signs per medical instructions. He hesitated for a moment, then allowed her entry. Sarah entered the first room and was shocked by what she found. The patient was awake, looking directly at her with eyes that seemed to carry the weight of terrible experiences. The man didn't look like an ordinary soldier. His scars were extensive and seemed to result from prolonged combat in hostile environments. Even more disturbing, he had tattoos that Sarah recognized as typical of special operations, but with symbols she had never seen in military manuals. When she approached to check his vital signs, the patient whispered something that made her tremble. "Nurse, you don't know what they did to us. We don't exist on paper anymore, but we're still alive in here." Sarah tried to ask more questions, but the man closed his eyes and pretended to be sleeping when he heard footsteps in the hallway. She left the room with her heart racing, feigning normalcy as she passed the guards. Back at her station, Sarah tried to process what she had just heard. What did he mean by, "we don't exist on paper anymore"? That phrase echoed in her mind for the rest of the night, and she began forming increasingly disturbing theories about the true nature of these mysterious patients. During the following days, Sarah began a meticulous investigation using all available resources without raising official suspicions. She researched the Black Raven patch in public databases of military units, but found nothing. She tried to identify the special medical equipment she saw in the rooms, discovering they were experimental technologies normally used in advanced military trauma research. Sarah also noticed that the doctors treating these patients weren't part of the base's regular staff. They arrived in civilian vehicles, used temporary badges, and never interacted with the rest of the medical personnel. It was as if they operated in a parallel dimension within the military base itself. The nurse began documenting everything discreetly: schedules, faces, license plates, conversations she could overhear. She kept this information in a personal notebook that she stored at home, away from the base. Sarah also began paying attention to other anomalies that previously went unnoticed. A week after her first discovery, Sarah noticed something that confirmed her worst suspicions. During a routine visit to the base pharmacy to get medications, she saw one of the mysterious doctors talking to the chief pharmacist. They were discussing experimental medications that weren't listed in the base's official inventory. Sarah pretended to be organizing papers while listening to the conversation. The doctor mentioned something about maintaining agents in controlled recovery state and modified memory protocols. The pharmacist seemed uncomfortable, but handed a sealed box to the doctor. Sarah memorized the name printed on the label: Project Black Raven, Special Authorization Delta. When the doctor left, Sarah approached the pharmacist and casually asked about those special medications. His reaction was immediate and alarming. He turned pale and said Sarah shouldn't have seen or heard anything. The pharmacist begged her to forget what she had witnessed and never mention the subject again. This extreme reaction confirmed to Sarah that she had discovered something truly dangerous. Determined to discover the complete truth, Sarah decided to take a riskier approach. She knew she needed concrete evidence if she wanted to expose whatever was happening at the base. During the next night shift, Sarah planned to enter the mysterious patient's rooms and document everything with photos. She waited until 3 in the morning when she knew security was at its lowest point. Carrying her cell phone camera and a convincing medical excuse, Sarah headed to the special recovery ward. This time, there was only one guard, and he was dozing in his chair. Sarah passed him silently and entered the first room. The patient was awake again, as if he had been waiting for her. He gestured for her to approach and whispered urgently, "Nurse, you need to know the truth about us. We're agents from an operation that never officially happened. We were sent on a mission that the American government completely denies. When we came back wounded, they couldn't treat us in normal hospitals because officially we never existed." The patient continued his disturbing revelation. "We're part of Project Black Raven, a joint CIA and Special Forces operation. We execute missions in enemy territory using false identities. If something goes wrong, the government can completely deny our existence. We're ghost soldiers, nurse. And now you know too much." Sarah felt her blood freeze in her veins. She discreetly photographed the patch on the uniform and some documents that were on the table beside the bed. The patient warned her, "They'll realize you know. You need to be very careful from now on. There are people at this base who would kill to protect this secret." Sarah wanted to ask more questions, but she heard footsteps in the hallway. She quickly left the room, passed the still sleeping guard, and returned to her station with her heart beating violently. Back at the relative safety of her station, Sarah processed the shocking information she had just received. Ghost soldiers, deniable operations, erased identities. She had stumbled upon something that could shake the foundations of the American government if exposed publicly. During the next few days, Sarah noticed subtle changes in how people treated her at the base. Some colleagues seemed to avoid her. Others made casual questions about her personal life and future plans. She began to suspect that her investigative activities had been noticed by people in positions of authority. Sarah decided to accelerate her investigation before it was too late. She used her personal contacts to research more about classified military operations and ghost soldiers. A journalist friend in Los Angeles sent her information about rumors of secret military programs that had never been officially confirmed. This information corresponded perfectly with what Sarah had discovered at the base. The nurse also began making copies of all the evidence she had collected, storing them in secure locations outside the military base. She instinctively knew her life could be in danger if the wrong people discovered what she knew about Project Black Raven. The confirmation of her suspicions came in an unexpected and terrifying way. On Friday morning, Sarah arrived at work and discovered that the 7 mysterious patients had disappeared during the night. There were no transfer records, no medical documentation indicating hospital discharge. It was as if they had simply evaporated. When Sarah discreetly asked other nurses about the patients, they looked at her with confusion and said they didn't know which patients she was talking about. It was as if the entire medical staff had developed collective amnesia about the events of the past 2 weeks. Sarah realized she was dealing with a professional and systematic cover-up operation. Someone with considerable power had decided to erase all evidence of those men's existence at the base, but Sarah still had the photos on her phone and her detailed notes at home. She was now the only person who could prove that Project Black Raven really existed. That afternoon, Sarah received a call on her personal phone from a number she didn't recognize. The voice on the other side was calm but threatening. "Miss Chen, we know you have some photos and notes that could be misinterpreted by people who don't understand the nature of classified military operations. It would be in your interest to meet with us tonight at 8 o'clock in the parking lot of the shopping center in Lancaster. Come alone and bring everything you've collected about matters that are not your responsibility." Sarah felt fear course through her body like an electric current. They knew exactly what she had discovered and where she kept the evidence. The call ended before she could respond, leaving her in total panic. Sarah knew she had 2 options: show up to the meeting and probably hand over everything she had discovered, or flee and try to expose the truth before being permanently silenced. The decision she made in the next few minutes would determine not only her future, but possibly the lives of many other people involved in similar secret operations. Sarah decided she would not attend the meeting. Instead, she left the base immediately, claiming a personal medical emergency. She drove straight home, collected all the evidence she had gathered about Project Black Raven, and copied it to multiple digital storage units. She sent copies to her journalist friend in Los Angeles with specific instructions about what to do if something happened to her. Sarah also prepared a detailed letter explaining everything she had discovered, sealed it in an envelope, and left it with her trusted neighbor with instructions to open it only if she disappeared or died under suspicious circumstances. At 7 in the evening, 1 hour before the scheduled meeting, Sarah was driving toward Mexico, using secondary roads and paying for everything in cash to avoid being tracked. She had made the most difficult decision of her life: abandon her military career, her established life, and possibly her permanent safety to protect a truth that the American government was determined to keep buried. 6 months later, Sarah Chen was living under a new identity in a small town in interior Mexico. She worked as a nurse in a local clinic, using documents she had obtained through contacts she preferred not to name. The story of Project Black Raven was never officially published. Her journalist friend in Los Angeles had been persuaded by federal authorities not to proceed with the investigation, citing national security issues. But Sarah knew the evidence still existed, stored in safe locations, waiting for the right moment to surface. She had lost her previous life, but had preserved an important truth about how the American government operated in the shadows. The ghost soldiers of Project Black Raven continued to exist, executing missions that officially never happened, protected by a cloak of plausible deniability that cost the basic humanity of men who risked their lives for their country. Sarah Chen had chosen conscience over convenience, and although she had paid a high price for that choice, she slept every night, knowing she had done the right thing in a world where doing the right thing was rarely the easiest option.